What's up, folks? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel. Right on time, as usual. Something I learned in the military, and that totally annoys me these days when people are not on time. Punctuality is next to godliness, my friends. All right, so a couple topics as we get people in here. It'll probably take 5-10 minutes to get some folks in here, but if you guys can hear me, if there's any issues with audio, please comment in the comment section for those of you that are here. If there's any kind of issue with video or something, comment. Otherwise, I'll just keep rambling on in the meantime. Things I want to discuss. Well, actually, I think the best way to start this broadcast is to administer my nicotine patch. Going to dose a nicotine patch today. I haven't dosed any nootropics. I don't plan to today. So this is a 7 milligram nicotine patch. Initially, because I haven't, I smoked when I was in the military. So that's kind of my introduction to nicotine. Well, I guess a little bit before that, but then, post that, aside from nicotine gum, I hadn't had like large nicotine exposure. So certainly the first time I dosed this thing, it was a little strong and it made me feel a little weird. Usually put it right there. And within about 5 minutes, I'm going to notice this start to kick in, which is really, really awesome. I love this stuff. It's as close to an amphetamine-like stimulation that you can get, which is bizarre, right? Because you can buy them for $30 or something at, Walgreens, which I really, really appreciate. So, I've been dosing nicotine in this capacity for, I want to say about 3 to 4 weeks, pretty ongoingly. And now it's become somewhat of a staple. I don't really feel like I'm addicted to using them, but I certainly am psychologically addicted to the effect that it gives me, which is very, very awesome. So we're going to get some more folks in here, and I'll get some questions on the screen. We'll let it populate. Those of you that are here, how are you? Hope you're doing great. Happy Saturday. It's springtime here in Pittsburgh. I don't know what it's like where you guys are, but officially spring. I mean, like in the front of my house, there's this bed of flowers. It's like a bunch of different, plants looking things. And like, dude, literally over the weekend, or like last weekend, they went from small little stubs of nothing to like full blown flowers. It's amazing how quickly that stuff happens. I like spring because Pittsburgh's a great city to do things outside. Like 5 minutes from me is the city, and then just on the other side of the city is the North Shore, where there's like the three rivers that come together, and the football stadium, Steelers Stadium, and the Pirates Stadium. So there's a lot of really cool shit happening over there. So I like to take my cats over there and walk around and get fresh air. And the great thing about spring is that you can do that all the time, which is awesome. So it looks like we got a question on nicotine, on stacking nicotine. Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll get that on the screen for you. The short answer is not a whole lot, right? Because I don't feel like I need to stack anything additional with nicotine because it's very powerful in and of itself. But I will get that question on the screen and we'll discuss it. So Jeff is asking, hey, what would you stack with nicotine? Look, if you're somebody that hasn't taken it before, I would take nicotine first by itself in a 7 milligram patch and just see how you fare. If you're not used to nicotine, it may make you nauseous or lightheaded, or you might feel a little weird. That's just, it basically kicks people's ass the first time they take it. If they have never ingested nicotine, haven't smoked, or aren't used to, nicotine being in the case, around in your regimen. Otherwise, look, if you get used to it and you notice good brain function from it, you probably wouldn't want to take anything that's cholinergic because you're addressing that by binding right to the choline receptors, the nicotinic ones, with nicotine. And so in that case, you'd shoot for something that's either energy inducing, which you got to be careful with because then you could induce overstimulation, or dopaminergic, which nicotine is also dopaminergic too, right? It'll get you to release some dopamine in the midbrain, which is cool. So I think the best bet, if you're already used to nicotine patches, would be to bring something in like low dose teacrine, 50, 75 milligrams, see how you fare, have some L-theanine around in case you get overstimulated. Other than that, I suppose you could stack it with things like bromantane or 9-MEBC to get kind of dopamine-like stimulation, which would be useful, but I have done neither of those things. So you'd be a pioneer, my friend, in doing that. Good question. Interesting question. If you guys got questions, post them in the chat. I will get to them and put them on the screen. Otherwise, other stuff that's going on with me. Yesterday we did the video about C-Max. Look, I like C-Max. Again, as I said, it really didn't stimulate me in some substantial way where I was like, wow, this either feels like a nicotine patch or it feels like, bromantane plus 9-MEBC plus teacrine, which is really strong. but it gives me a clarity in my thinking and a better ability to visualize what I'm thinking, which I find really, really useful. So I got a vial of, like, what do they call it? Liposized powder. It's just how peptides come. So I had to reconstitute it with bacteriostatic water, and I'm doing subcutaneous injections of it. I ran a good degree of Cmax this week and last week, and I'll probably run some more perhaps over the weekend. I guess it depends on what's going on, but more than likely next week for sure. The last thing I wanted to mention before we get into questions is I have been experimenting with baby formula. So I'm the guy that does all the bizarre stuff so that you don't have to, and to inform you on it. I've recently got a panel of my gut bacteria, and there are a few species that are problematically low that I don't like, right? Looking at the, first of all, the way that I degrade or interact with histamine is not particularly great. Like there are certain histamine producing foods that'll give me somewhat symptoms. So historically, I've taken histamine degrading probiotic, which works for that. But the results on my gut microbiome measurement testing showed that I had a pretty substantial reduction in bifidobacterium, which as an adult, you don't have a ton of, but you have a good degree of. Interestingly, you when you're born and you drink your mother's breast milk, bifidobacterium is the catalyst for the production of the rest of your gut microbes. It is literally the ground zero gut microbe, and specifically Bifidobacteria infantis. The reason you grow that is because of human milk oligosaccharides, which are in your mother's breast milk. And so what I am trying to do, and I'll go and measure my gut bacteria again, is see if I can affect Bifido other than with probiotics, because they're transient for the most part. Not that they're not useful, they're just transient. And then see if I have a measurable increase in Bifidobacteria species after routine consumption of baby formula. I'm literally drinking the formula it's about 5 ounces a day. It's as close to mother's breast milk as possible. It's Similac 360 Total Care, for those of you interested. But aside from the human milk oligosaccharides, which I'm attempting to rebuild bifidobacteria with, it's also got cytidine 5-monophosphate, which is essentially a uridine analog. It's got some other nucleotides in it. It has uridine monophosphate in it, so it's got nootropic goodies, choline and inositol. So I literally feel a nootropic benefit when I take it as well, which has been really interesting. I'm not suggesting anyone go and consume baby formula, but there actually are studies on this for which disease was it? It was either Crohn's or IBS, right? And rebuilding the population of the gut microbes. Because that's essentially how you built them in the beginning. It was mother's breast milk, right? So who's to say it wouldn't be effective as an adult if you are sure that you have a deficiency in certain species? So that's why I'm kind of experimenting with it. So we got some other questions. And I think I'll answer them in order. We had a question about dihexa. Dihexa is a hepatocyte growth factor stimulating nootropic. It's a neurogenic nootropic in that it should make you grow new neurons, at the very least, facilitate the function of the survival, really, of your existing neurons. I just got a screenshot of that. All right. So this is the question. This is the question in question. So Simon Marshall saying, hey, Ryan, got a couple questions. Would you recommend dihexa? I think you've experimented with it. Yeah, I certainly have experimented with it. I think I have some dihexa in my bin downstairs. Yeah, look, I wouldn't recommend it haphazardly, but I would suggest you look into the usage of it if you are, somewhat sure or relatively sure that you need to work on brain chemistry, whether you're trying to upregulate receptor sites or I think the most prominent case in which it would be very useful would be if you had damaged neuronal function somehow, like COVID or excessive cytokine release, or high levels of TNF alpha. Any kind of brain inflammatory disease is probably degrading neuronal function, in which case, perhaps using dihexa would be useful. I've used it, and in acute phases, it actually makes my brain work better, which is interesting. It's like something like that, which is binding right to hepatocyte growth factor. and stimulating neurogenesis and stuff, like you wouldn't really think that it would affect you positively within 25 minutes, but it seemed to do that for me and some of my clients. So that's interesting. I've used it in conjunction with 9-methyl-beta-carboline and bromontane to repair what I can only call post-Adderall syndrome, where, there was this user who had dosed Adderall for 6 or 7 years and then eventually got diminishing returns and then had next to no sex drive, was largely anhedonic, so he didn't really have pleasure from anything, and he couldn't focus. And so that took some time to work out, but with 9-MEBC, bromontane, and dihexa, we resolved it. So, anecdotal, yes. Were there other factors in play? Yes, but it was largely those 3 chemicals. That's what I would say about dihexa. Largely safe. I don't think it should be taken daily. And we were doing 2 to 3x weekly of, I believe, 20 to 25 milligrams, somewhere in that range. Pretty interesting compound. Good question, though. Jeff is saying uses pouches. I'm assuming you're saying nicotine pouches. Yeah, those, I've never used those before. The gum, I definitely don't get. So for those of you that didn't know, like right as we launched this stream, I put on a nicotine patch. And yeah, the gum affects me like positively in this cognitive capacity, but it doesn't last as long at all. And it isn't as strong like in that initial stimulation at all. Like I'm already noticing this nicotine patch. I've probably become more verbally fluent in the last 6 or 7 minutes. And that's just basically what it does. Simon Marshall appears to be asking a question about mucuna and libido. So let's get that answered. Mucuna is like one of those really epic compounds that doesn't get enough attention for how great it is. But garners somehow like this negative attention around the fact that, people are conflating it with like L-Dopa, which is like scientific error. It's not L-Dopa. It's naturally occurring, very small, minute amount of L-Dopa in conjunction with a bunch of other chemicals. All right. Simon's question is saying, loving mucuna, especially libido benefits. Yes. I think there's a serum prolactin lowering effect to it. And there is a mechanism for, I believe, free testosterone increases. Don't quote me on that. I forget what the mechanism is. But it's either total or free testosterone. I believe it's free test. It maybe has to do with sex hormone binding globulin, but also going to give you usable dopamine. He goes, the only thing is, after a few days, it seems to make me feel a bit off and fatigued. Is there any potential I could take to anything I can do to negate any potential? I would have to look at your regimen because, there may be something else that's causing that to happen, right? That you're not aware of or that you're not factoring into the situation. I'm one of those people that's like, there's so many things that are generally spoken about that people really think are happening, but then it's like, I don't know, it's the avocado you're eating that is triggering a histamine response in your gut and sending TNF alpha into your brain. It's just like, I've gotten that granular about stuff that like, I just scrutinize everything, man. But yeah, let's just say that that's the case and you're getting some sort of fatigue from it. I'd look at your adrenal hormones and see where they are. I mean, that'd be my first like general guess about it. Potentially you got some low cortisol. And so stimulating the dopamine and noradrenaline that you're going to get from mucuna, because you will stimulate both from mucuna, maybe taxing your energy or maybe taxing your pituitary's ability to signal to the adrenal cortex to make cortisol. I don't know if there's a mechanism for that, but that would be my first suggestion. Other than that, I don't know your dose, so maybe you just need to lower your dose. Otherwise, mucuna is a very powerful compound. And yeah, what people don't realize is that it also raises noradrenaline. So, I mean, I take a 500 milligram dose of it when I take it. These days, I'm usually taking it just exclusively in torque because it is in torque. And we have it at, 500 milligrams, like pure raw velvet bean in torque, which is, the plant that mucuna comes from. And if I take it by itself, noticeable dopamine enhancement, like that kind of motivated energy to be interested in things, but also stimulation because of the noradrenaline. I love mucuna. I've been taking it for years. The sort of internet parroting about the desensitization of dopamine receptors is untrue. And if you understand dopamine receptors, the only thing that really has the ability to do that is pharmaceutical L-Dopa, which is not the same at all, and or hardcore D2 receptor agonists like cabergoline. And you got to take that stuff for a year plus to run into that issue. And some people never run into that issue with high dose dopamine agonists. So mucuna's not going to do that. Good question though. Jesse Batone has a question about DHEA, looks like. See if I can get that on the screen. Those of you that just jumped on, what's up? If you got questions, ask them. I will answer them as soon as I can. And we'll get to Jesse's question. Okay, so Jesse's going, hey, what's up, Ryan? Been taking the supplement DHEA for a year, 75 milligrams. Want to see if there's side effects. Do you recommend coming off, getting blood work done? Yeah, look at your labs. I mean, you'll be building a little more testosterone from taking DHEA for most men. I don't think it's, I mean, I guess it depends on where you are on the scale of free and total testosterone, but I don't think it's a great, like, you know, replacement for your inborn testosterone. You always want to work on that. Yeah, I've seen men anecdotally report energy from taking it. You know, when I fussed with DHA, which was back in the day, it was when I was 33 and my total test was at like 290, because this is the real thing. That's what got me into the testosterone side of things in addition to nootropics, because I was just nootropics before, like, when was this, 2016, 2015 timeframe, whatever that was. And then my test, you know, had been markedly low, which happened after a 9-month keto stint, hint. And then I started taking DHEA, noticed like I was able to run easier, like it was weird, like I had more energy, more endurance. It was probably testosterone levels. It didn't markedly increase my testosterone, but it increased my testosterone. I think I was up like 75 points or something, nanograms per deciliter total test, nothing significant. I think it's a perfectly safe supplement to take. Yeah, get your bloods and see kind of where you're at. If you're 43 years old, you want to look at total test, free test. Estradiol will inform you on what your test to estrogen ratio is. And if you have any sex drive issues, you can use that as kind of a diagnostic criteria to determine what to do. But I'd ultimately look at labs and see where your testosterone is. If you have symptoms related to test, you're 43, you'll get approved by a clinic to get on TRT any day. And by the way, yeah, as you see on the screen, so discount on Torque, coupon code is 15 now. I will always give you guys a coupon code on live streams for product if you want to try the stack. I mean, it's usually 8 hours of good brain function, but I kind of want to be conservative in saying 6 hours of energy. This stuff is just very potent. We blow out of inventory faster than anything I've ever seen in my life. Like, we just have to keep reordering it and buying bigger batches of the stuff because it's potent. So you can get that 15% off. Also, getting on TRT. This is a digital guide that I wrote, which synthesizes all the information that you need to understand to get on TRT. You know, like I had been working with men on TRT for 6 years before I got on TRT. So I didn't really need to go and learn more things, but the average person that doesn't study TRT and testosterone, it's like there's so much disparate information and some of it doesn't agree with other elements of it. So I put everything in one guide. It's a digital downloadable PDF and you can get that at livecortex.com. All right. Other questions here. Odie is asking a question, looks like about teacrine and uridine. So let's get that answered. Friends. I slept great tonight. I don't know how you guys slept, but I mean, sleeping good is always the determinant of how good you'll function. I can get away with functioning well with nootropics, etc. in the morning if I hadn't slept well, but it usually catches up to me later. But last night, I mean, it was only 7.5 hours, but very, very sound sleep. Odie is saying, hey, what dose of teacrine would be good for stacking with 150 of uridine? 50 to 75 milligrams is what I would suggest. I mean, this assumes that your energy is pretty good otherwise. If it isn't, and you're suffering from poor sleep or something, then I'd take it to like 100, 150. So between 50 and 150, considering all those circumstances. Those are good compounds to stack together. Be careful, though, because through the adenosine receptors, which is what teacrine binds to, uridine doesn't bind to it, but there's some sort of interaction that makes them potentiate each other. The literature on this is difficult to understand because it's one of the most complex scientific papers I've read in a long time, but there's a strong interaction between caffeine or teacrine or theobromine, any of the methylxanthines, the prominent ones, and uridine, which basically potentiates the stimulant effect. So that would be my suggestion on that. Great combination, though, for sure. So I guess I'm being asked a question about testosterone needle size and gauge. So we'll answer that. We'll get that on the screen. I think the answer would be a lot less exciting than you might imagine. So, look, I'm a biohacker, right? So I wanted to, after going on TOT, experiment with everything. So I've done everything from 1-inch harpoon needles, in my quad muscle, the muscle that's part of the quad, right, to the right or left, depending on which leg, into deep intramuscular injections. And that was a 24, 25 gauge 1-inch needle. But I'm injecting at this point every other day, shallow intramuscular. So you're barely hitting the muscle. There's actually I don't know the medical phrase for this. It's not an MRI, but some other sort of look into the muscle where it was actually proven that the it's a 30 gauge needle, half-inch needle, 30 gauge, or 29 or 30 gauge half-inch needle will reach muscle tissue, just won't be deep IM. That's why they call it shallow IM, but it actually literally on that graphic reach the muscle. So that's what I'm doing. Half-inch insulin needle. I think it's 30 gauge, which means it's like, I do not feel it. It's every other day. I've bumped my dose up to 170 milligrams a week. Just trying to see what the highest tolerability of total test and free test is for me, how the muscle gains and otherwise energy translates there, and then what that ends up doing to my estradiol. So far, I've certainly noticed, and I have one reading on labs that shows me that estradiol has crept up past a point where I'm comfortable. So, I microdosed a aromatase inhibitor to get that back down in range, and I got to go back to see what that range ends up being. But the symptoms that were coming from that are instantly gone, which is beautiful. No joint pain, no weird stuff going on. Also, high dose fish oil, which, is a major part of that. But yeah, insulin pen, half-inch needle, 30 gauge needle. Very, very easy. And not that half-inch or 5/8 of an inch or 1-inch deep intramuscular is bad or anything. It's actually, I don't know why people make that such a big deal. It's fine. It's normal. But, pinning more frequently, obviously, and then using these thinner, painless needles is definitely good. It's like convenient. Jedi is saying he's been using 29 grams 5/6 for sub-Q Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Got it. I don't know where you can get a 5/6 needle. That's interesting. But totally cool. Yeah, injection frequency and injection methods. I mean, it's just, it's weird because there are people that go sub-Q with a insulin needle and end up doing terrible, right? And their ECU goes through the roof, and they feel marked reductions in energy and libido. And that's because, look, the intramuscular tissue disperses testosterone differently than subcutaneous tissue. And there are factors that determine, how you're going to basically distribute the testosterone through your blood sub-Q. They're metabolic factors largely. So if you're sitting around all day, like you don't move a whole lot, well, that's going to, probably or presumably mean that you're not dispersing that testosterone quick enough. And if you're used to a much more kind of bioavailable blood concentration of testosterone, then going to sub-Q is going to make you feel shitty for a while until you adjust to it. Darren is asking, can I high dose teacrine every day? By high dose, I assume you mean below 200 milligrams. The answer is yes. You might get, anxiety at some point. I don't have any experience with Catawba. I forget exactly what it does. But so this is a good question though, because you're referencing PSSD. So let's try to answer it. What's that noise? So the moment spring hit, like every one of my neighbors, like it happens every year, at all times of the day are out there fucking weed whacking and doing shit. Literally the day of it was warm. Everybody, they're like, okay, let's go. Time to go, 6 a.m, 8 p.m, just like whenever. They're all out there doing it. All right, so Simon is asking, ordered some Catawba yesterday. Was wondering if you had any experience with it, trying to cure PSSD while still experimenting with nootropics. Yeah, if you have PSSD, my first recommendation would be not to take nootropics because you don't want anything messing with the neuroendocrine side of what is ultimately the root of PSSD, which is, your sex hormones and their balance, them being in the right place. Secondly, the singular compound approach is a futile approach to PSSD. You'll never cure it that way. You're never going to get alleviate. You may get windows or something, but you will never cure it. And I hate definitive statements, but I've been working on it for 6 years, maybe a little more, with clients in real time. Never, ever has a singular compound approach been effective, with the rare exception of basically steroid-based androgen receptor agonists that are not testosterone. Other androgen receptor agonists, and I forget off the top of my head the name of the one that was very effective. But you're not going to cure PSSD that way. So my advice to you would be, get out of the mindset that it's a singular compound. Get out of the mindset that you need to fix some neurotransmitter thing. That's not true either. You're not. I've done every single thing under the sun, from serotonin depletion to dopamine agonism to a host of things I don't have time to mention, and none of it cures PSSD. It's just not it. You can get alleviation, and there's suspicion of dopamine, and there is dopamine derangement. You got to get to the bottom of the hormonal profile. Whether you're normal or not doesn't matter, because guys on TRT could have low libido and in some cases loss of sensation and ED because their protocol isn't dialed in. You have to have a very, very tightly knit ratio of testosterone to estrogen, among other things like DHEA and pregnenolone. And some men, they're going to need TRT plus something like HCG to keep gonadotropin binding happening in the testicles, and that ends up, curing them of the disease. So get off of the singular compound approach. You will be racking your brain for the next 10 years and you won't be better. And I say that somewhat annoyed, because the community itself, which is, there's some good people and there's obviously some crazy people in there. They want to keep pushing this serotonin theory and all this other stuff, and they get mad at you for suggesting anything else. It's just this self-defeating circle. So not going to get better with Catawba. Other questions? Good questions so far, guys. Hope you guys are doing great. Hope you slept well last night. That's always the determinant of how good you feel. Certainly is for me. No, I don't have experience with cerebral lysin as of yet. Do I have that coming in? I know that recently I was thinking when I was ordering stuff, I should get that, but I forget if I brought it in or not. I don't believe I did. I will be bringing it in though to test it. Because as I get more into other peptides, and look, I've got to test them for a good degree of time. The only reason I did that CMAX video is because I had taken CMAX back in the day. I had dosed it intranasally back then. So I had experience with it, and then bringing it in again, understanding the mechanisms, running it, I was comfortable enough talking about it. With cerebral lysin, I have no experience with it, right? So I've got to bring that in, really get down to experimenting with it, do it the right way in terms of notating my results so that I can give you guys accurate information relating to it. Those of you that just jumped on, hope you're doing great. Wow, it's April 15th already. I don't know about you guys. I feel like time is moving really quickly. Time is just moving quickly, man. And maybe that's because my life is routine or whatever, but it's just wow, it's April already. It's going to be June very soon. It's going to be the end of the summer. It's going to be fall, and depending on where you are, it's going to start getting cold again. And it's going to be winter again. Time is moving. Those of you that just jumped on, as you see on the screen, Torque, I still have a discount code for you, 15% off. Coupon code is 15 now. What can you expect? When you administer Torque, it's 20, 25 minutes later. It's not like caffeine, because caffeine you get used to, right? It's all right, cool, I'm awake or whatever. Torque is you almost feel like your entire brain is communicating with itself, and that it's like a stimulant, right? In that regard, that your brain is very high powered, but it's balanced in a way which you don't feel kind of that disgusting, jittery stimulant feeling. But then also there are hints of improved processing power via the Alcar and Citicoline. So you improve your functionality, and then you also have this noticeable energy. Torque is really amazing. You can get it at livecortex.com, 15% off, coupon code 15 now. All right. Other questions. It looks like Darren has a question on ADHD. I can see if I can get that answered. A second here. So Darren is asking, good nootropics for ADHD. I believe that's the basis of the question here. That's the most recent one. Yeah, dexedrine. Couldn't advise you on dexedrine, but yeah, on the nootropic side, you got to look into the Mr. Happy stack. I always come back to that because that is an anecdotal rich nootropic stack that suggests that people that have attention deficit issues and hyperactivity issues, that they benefit very substantially from the Mr. Happy stack. It is attempting to work on some of the dopaminergic underpinnings of ADHD and ADD-like states. So Google the Mr. Happy stack and take it. Try it on those days. I wouldn't take anything else because you kind of want to, in your particular case, you want to find something that works and just stick with it. If you're going to be dosing the pharmaceutical for a couple days and then dosing a nootropic for the other couple days, you want to just take one thing. Mr. Happy stack, the basis of it is uridine, a choline source. Importantly, though, B vitamins and fish oil together in somewhat high concentrations on the DHA side. You want to have high dose DHA in that fish oil supplement. Magnesium, vitamin E, and a few other things. But like if I take that stack, I'm lit up for 6 hours and I feel great and my brain functions amazingly and I can focus really well. And, an ADHD person takes that stack and they have alleviation from their hyperactivity in some cases, but most cases like attention issues. That would be my suggestion. Yeah, the UK, basically they have a problem with citicoline. It's a prescription over there. They went as far as to communicate with our merchant services company from one of their banks. That's how far they went to get us to stop selling what was Cortex over there in the UK. Utterly ridiculous. Colostrum, Jesse Batone is asking about. I think that's what you're trying to spell there. I've taken in the past. I don't know. It seems to help some people with immune issues, gut issues. I wouldn't think that it would be very, very beneficial. I don't think you're going to rebuild gut bacteria with colostrum. You might have a degree of anti-inflammation, etc. But other than that, not a whole lot. Okay, Serene618 is asking a question about non-cholinergic nootropics to take later in the day. Let's see if we can list some and try to figure that out. I assume cholinergic stuff makes you feel, at least later in the day, a little too stimulated or messes with your sleep or something. Okay, so this is the question. Any non-cholinergic nootropics that wouldn't impact sleep later that day? Yeah, plenty. I mean, I look with teacrine and theobromine, which are both methylxanthines but work differently or feel differently. You can get away with taking them. I take teacrine sometimes 4 or 5 p.m., but I can't take any more than 100 milligrams because then it'll mess with my sleep. You just got to find your cutoff for you. Otherwise you would want to look at seeing if bromantane 30 to 50 milligrams negatively affects your sleep. In the beginning of my interaction with bromantane, it messed with my sleep no matter what I did. And then that just went away. Don't know why. I'm happy for that, but that's the case with bromantane. Perhaps you want to look into some non-neurotransmitter modifying stuff like vinpocetine. Vinpocetine make you your blood flow better in your brain and give you more, I think it's oxygen uptake in brain tissue, which will give you the feeling like you're on a nootropic when you're not actually modifying neurotransmitters. Those would be my suggestions. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? You could try C-Max. I just did a video about that. That will elevate extracellular dopamine levels somewhat, and that will probably give you some good brain function. It definitely does for me. But it didn't disrupt my sleep. And last week or something, I took C-Max at 2 p.m. or something was my first injection of it. So no issues there. Yeah, Simon, I know that. I keep getting told that, but yet still we get pinged every time we're trying to sell, the stack with citicoline in there. I don't believe uridine was ever an issue, or artichoke extract, or bacopa. I have 1,000 things that I'm focusing on, right, and wanting to do. So I will look back into that because the UK market for us from a business perspective is obviously huge. And, but all of you guys from the UK, want us to sell our stacks in there, and I'm going to look back into it and focus on it over the coming months for sure. We have a new version of Cortex that is launching. It's basically the same formula with the addition of a powerful methylxanthine, which potentiates the effect. I've taken that stack in trials and it's very, very strong. Don't even want to talk about it, but that's going to launch in a couple months. So look forward to that. I mean, regular Cortex is powerful, but this is going to be like Cortex on steroids. Yeah, I'll look into cerebral lysin. Been talking about that, so far on this stream. I have to get it in, have adequate time fussing with it, and then I'll report on it. Other questions, guys? If you got questions, ask them. Hope you guys are doing great. Hope you had a great weekend so far. I know what your plans are. I'm going to take the cats over to the North Shore today. I don't know if there's a game on or if there's a game going, a Pirates game. But I got a cat bag. It's like a front and back cat bag, and I'm going to take my cats over there and chick watch. Sit in front of the rivers, hang out for a little bit. I think I have dinner later on tonight at my favorite restaurant called Ditka's. Second favorite restaurant here in Pittsburgh. And then that's it. Don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. I may even actually relax, which means like 40% of the day will be work and 60% of the day will be relaxing. A little bit of a reset, brother. All right, guys. Any other questions? If you got questions, post them. Something burning on your mind, get it out. All right. Use this opportunity to, instead of paying for a consult, ask a question. Now, of course, we can't get as detailed as we would on consults, but I can do the best I can on answering your question. And by the way, for those of you here that are interested in consulting, I don't know if you know that we just launched these email consults. I'm getting like 11 or 12 a day now, which is basically like a consult. You can summarize your situation and your problem, provide bloods if you have them, and then get a targeted email response from me to figure out what to do, right? With protocols moving forward, how I think you should approach it. We've had great success so far. I was wondering, like, could we actually get enough done in that capacity? And so far we have had a lot of good success with it. Yeah, chick watching with cats is fun, dude. Yeah, I like to take my cats out. It's important for them to get out, not just outside in my backyard, but I think it's important for them to see new things. I think it's important to scare them a little bit. Like, my girl cat I take in my car and she fucking hates it, but she always comes back to the house more energized. She's like, wow, I just saw this stuff. And like now my brain has stuff to think about. It's like exposing them to things is really awesome. I was mentioning earlier that one of my most bizarre experiments that I'm running lately has been baby's formula. So I drink 5 ounces of baby formula every day in the morning. I've been doing that for, I'm going to say like 8-9 days or something. It's Similac 360 Total Care, which is as close to mother's breast milk that you can get. And the purpose for that, aside from the nootropics that are in it, because actually uridine monophosphate, citicoline, inositol is in it, which I actually notice in a nootropic passing when I take it. But, some iron, regular vitamins in low doses. But human milk oligosaccharides, which are the basis for how your gut populates when you're a baby. It starts from Bifidobacterium infantis and then branches out to the rest of the species of gut bacteria. So I recently did a measurement of all the microbes in my gut, and Bifidobacterium is lower than I'd like it to be. And this would make sense with some corresponding minor symptoms that I have in response to certain foods. So I'm trying to fix that by drinking human milk oligosaccharides. That's been my most bizarre biohack lately. I don't have results on it yet. My gut seems to be working better since I've started it. My brain certainly is, which is awesome because of the nootropics that are in it. And I'm going to do it for probably another month and a half, like 2 months total. Then I'm going to go rerun the gut microbe test and see exactly what changed. I can almost guarantee that I will positively benefit the Bifido species. I can get very positive benefits from Bifidobacteria probiotics, but they're transient, right? It's very hard to colonize them. There are some that do colonize, some that don't, and there's also factors on the probiotics that do that influence whether or not they do. So that's my most bizarre biohack, is literally drinking infant formula, 5 ounces a day. But there is research behind it. There's research, and then there was all these news stories that came out. I'm not sure where it went on it aiding, I think it was IBS-D, irritable bowel syndrome, and possibly Crohn's disease. These are other gut-related issues where essentially the goal is to rebuild the gut microbiome. And what better way to do that than how you did it when you were a baby, especially considering prebiotic supplements are often not effective. Probiotic supplements are often transiently effective. eating the foods that will convert to the bacteria that you need is and sometimes problematic if you have an overage of other bacteria that might eat it. That's hypothetical or theoretical, but you got SIBO or something, then the wrong bacteria are going to be fermenting your carbohydrates. So, consuming it in liquid form, I'm hypothesizing will be useful. More to come on that. That should be very interesting how that all ends up. I think it's going to be powerful. All right, other questions, guys. If you guys got questions, ask them. We've gotten a lot done so far, which is great. I am, 35 minutes into my nicotine patch for the day. It's right here. I will leave that patch on probably until 6, 7 p.m. Those of you that asked about kind of some of the side effects that are associated with it, I'm used to it now. If you're not used to nicotine, you probably get overstimulated, maybe a little nauseous, maybe feel lightheaded. You will get used to it very quickly. Nicotine tends to kick your ass if you're not used to it. But even still, I'm used to nicotine. I was a smoker in the military. I've been chewing nicotine gum, for years or whatever. There still will be a point, even with 7 milligram patches, where it overstimulates the sympathetic nervous system too much. And it makes me feel uneasy. Then I got to remove the patch. And then within 5 minutes, I'm back to normal. So, yeah, I mean, it's like you get this crazy benefit of stimulant brain energy and a better ability to process information because you're binding right to the choline receptors, which control that. And it's very, very powerful. And for the most part, next to no side effects. No sleep issues so far in dosing them. Honestly, really like them. Anything above 7 milligrams, however, and I don't feel good at all. I feel way overstimulated. My chest starts feeling strange, and I got to fucking rip it off. So 7 milligrams is my sweet spot. Delivered over, usually have them on for about 14 hours or so, and I take it off. Mr. Nearly is asking a question about kratom. This is a good question, so let's address it. Question is, what is my take on kratom? Kratom is, I believe, opioid receptor or mu opioid receptor agonist. I believe it has some dopaminergic properties. I'm probably messes with other neurotransmitters too. My primary take on it is I wouldn't call it dangerous, but I would call it problematic. And it's problematic because it blocks dopamine receptor function in a way which stimulates blood levels of prolactin. Now, and this is in I think the metric was 65, 70% of people, which is not a good metric if you're considering taking kratom. You don't want high levels of prolactin, okay? It will inhibit your erections at the penile base. It inhibits erections at the vascular level, the penile base, so you're going to have ED if your prolactin gets past a certain threshold. And then, from the neurological side, prolactin comes from a particular type of cell called a lactotrope. And those lactotropes are on your, they're in your pituitary gland. I think it's the anterior pituitary gland. And so you don't want to be stimulating lactotropes. You just fucking don't want to do that because that can turn into a tumor, essentially. And if you have a pituitary tumor, that's going to mess with your hormones in a way which is going to disrupt your life, possibly for a long time. You're going to have to get on dopamine agonists and all this nonsense. So don't fucking take it. That's what I would suggest. There are other ways to reach whatever goals you're trying to reach. If you're someone that's coming off of other opioid receptor agonists, I understand that you're probably in pain at some level or, you're not functioning correctly, but you've got to look into other ways to address that. It's like band-aiding a cut with another cut. You just wouldn't want to do that. That's a weird analogy, but you guys get it. Nothing good about stimulating extra prolactin release. Because, if you're one of those people that you're stimulating prolactin release and you're not watching your estrogen levels, as an example, people think estrogen is great and you should have it at all. Yeah, it helps heart health, brain health. There's estrogen receptors everywhere. Estrogen is also very strongly implicated in fact, there's a causative effect in pituitary tumors and specifically excessive growth of lactotropes. So, in that particular study, they fed rats. They kept them steadily above 100 picograms per milliliter of estradiol. And they fucking grew pituitary tumors. So, as an aside, those of you that listen to Danny Bossa and all those guys on Reddit and YouTube that you should never touch estrogen, that's horseshit. You absolutely should manage estrogen. if it gets past a certain range, and it's different for different guys, 30 to 40 picograms per milliliter. But if you're taking kratom and you're stimulating prolactin synthesis and your estrogen, you're not managing your serum E2, then you could have a big problem in the form of a pituitary tumor eventually, which is not good. There's nothing good about that. That'd be my take on it. I think, yeah, as I said, I mean, I think there's other ways too that you can address whatever you're trying to take kratom for. Don't take it. You know, there's a lot of like silly guys, you know, that's what I call them on the internet that say kratom is good. Like the dude from, what's it, the Nootropic Reviewer? I think his name is Michael something. I mean, good guy, probably smart guy, clown in my opinion though. I mean, you know, I did a video about kratom suggesting it was a nootropic. Complete fucking bullshit. Don't take the stuff, all right? This is people's lives we're talking about here. You don't want to be promoting shit that will harm people. So no, I wouldn't touch kratom. Odie is saying something about nicotine patches. So let's see if we can address that. Actually, yeah, this is a good statement question. And what the point is here is nicotine patches may lead to like some bizarre dreams. Man, have I noticed bizarre dreams since I've been dosing nicotine. Those of you that just jumped on, yeah, I took a 7 milligram nicotine patch the moment we got on here. It's sitting right here, kind of on my chest area. Odie's saying, hey, I've heard of people forgetting they put the patch on and falling asleep and having crazy nightmares. Yeah, I mean, dreams are cholinergically based or mediated, right? The more acetylcholine you have in your brain, more it's going to bind to receptors. That activation is what gives you lucid, vivid dreams. Like people experiment with things like huperzine A to induce lucid dreaming. Huperzine A is another cholinergic, basically inhibits choline metabolism and makes you accumulate choline in the brain. So yes, since I've been taking nicotine patches, I have had more dreams where I remember them and they're also more vivid, but I like that. I like it, you know? I'm just like, whatever. Even if it's bad, you know, in the worst of situations, I'm like, all right, give me your worst because I want to grow. So I certainly have experienced that. And yeah, that can happen. I mean, if you're just constantly supplying the cholinergic receptors with acetylcholine in this capacity, then you're going to have some pretty wild dreams. One night I did forget to take, or I just didn't realize it was still on, a nicotine patch. I think my sleep was poor that night, poorer than, you know, usual, which is good. Usually sleep is good, but nothing significant. I just think my heart was beating a little too fast, and I was like, you know, I woke up and I was like, why am I feeling like this? And I didn't know until the next morning. Like, oh fuck, the nicotine patch was on all night. Like, wow. Someone's asking about something against gray hair. Not my specialty. Wouldn't be able to help you there. Any other questions, guys? If you got questions, ask them. I will try to answer them. Stream health. Yeah, I think we got the stream health thing figured out. I think there's some UFC fights on tonight. I think Max Holloway's fighting, and he's an old school GOAT. Been in the game for a while. Obviously lost his. I don't think he's in his prime anymore, Max Holloway. So we'll see how it goes. I think he's been talking about the potential to fight Volkanovski again, and yeah, you got to be in your prime for that, man. You know, as we saw with Masvidal. Masvidal's 38, right? Good that he retired. You just, you get past a point where you're not in your prime anymore, and you just can't fight like that. You know, everybody has a prime. I'm hoping that McGregor isn't out of his prime, but I think he is. I mean, guy's a fucking near billionaire and all this stuff. I just don't see him, being good when he comes back in. He's also got to go back to his old style of like, keeping distance, that karate like style, which made him the featherweight champion, and then had him basically like destroy Eddie Alvarez, became the lightweight champion. So whatever. I don't know about Conor. I've given up on it, honestly. He might fight Chandler in August or in August of 2057. We'll see. Trey is mentioning that he took bromontane recently, got an interesting response. So let's put that on the screen and discuss. Yeah, bromontane is just so tried and true, man. I love it. I love bromontane. Some people don't get a response from it, and that's usually like their physiology, whatever's happening in their body that is making them not notice the stimulation from bromontane, or they have some sort of major deficiency in the genetic basis for tyrosine hydroxylase, which is the enzyme, one of the enzymes that bromontane will help facilitate, which will make you make more dopamine. But yeah, Trey says, hey, took bromontane recently, was awesome. Can't wait to take it semi-regularly. Yeah, you should be able to get away with that. I don't see a big issue with taking it regularly. I don't think I've ever taken it very consistently, like as much as I take Torque or as much as I take fish oil or whatever, or Alcar. You know, I did a 6-month stint with Alcar and that was great. But yeah, bromontane should be safe to take somewhat consistently. You know, with research chemicals or with chemicals like that, which, you know, don't have as much published literature on them, but do have a ton of anecdotals, you want to be careful. You know, I wouldn't be dosing it every day. You'll probably lose the potency of the effect via some sort of, you know, negative response or lessened response of the fostering of the expression of the dopamine conversion enzyme. So that's theoretical, but that would be my take on it. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, for sparing use, a couple times a week, bromontane's awesome. I mean, the stuff is just feels like Adderall to me. You know, there's a couple things, there are a few things that feel like Adderall. Like, you know, Torque is one of them, nicotine patches are another, and bromontane's another. Cortex, pretty close. Interesting point though. Very popular compound though. I mean, I don't see it going anywhere either. Like I see it continuing to be useful and popular, which is really good. I mean, bromontane is just very, very powerful. I think we're getting asked a question about which of our supplements are close to modafinil. Well, it's hard to make that comparison, right? Because modafinil has mechanisms of extracellular dopamine creation and GABA inhibition and orexin peptide activation. So like it's different in its mechanisms, but so I'll put that question on the screen and just quickly answer it. It's different for different people. There are some people that are going to take the Cortex stack and be like, this feels like modafinil. You know, my guy at my sales rep at the product manufacturing facility that we use, a company called Nutriscience Labs in New York, took Cortex when we were first formulating it. And he's like, I have a script for modafinil and this seems like that. He's like, dude, I was locked in, man. And then plenty of other people take it and they get a comparable response. And then some people, it's not comparable to modafinil at all, right? Depends on your brain. But between the two of them, Torque and Cortex, for that sort of effect, you'd want to shoot for Torque. I mean, no question you'd want to shoot for Torque for that kind of effect. That's what I built it for. It was like, you know, let me build a stack that for no question in people's minds that it's very, very strong and noticeable. Comparable to modafinil, hard to say because it's a pharmaceutical drug that, again, has different mechanisms. But if you want to get close to that, take Torque. Interesting question, though, out of the two. But you ought to try Cortex, too, because, again, for some people, it's comparable. That's why I built Cortex as a modafinil alternative, because I discovered modafinil in 2013, 2012. No, it must have been earlier than that. And I loved it, man. Like, I still love it, but I wanted to make something comparable. That's really what drove the formulation of our stacks. Interesting question, though. Any other questions, guys? Those of you that just jumped on, hope you're doing great. Happy Saturday. Hope you slept well last night. I slept like a beast, man. I feel great. Had a cheat day yesterday. Cheat day. Pizza and breadsticks, my friends. Pizza and breadsticks. That's my cheat day food. I love it. You know, once a week, sometimes. Now that I'm bulking and trying to actually put on mass, you know, I'm having to eat more. So I'm, you know, having to cheat more basically, which is fine. I'll just stuff my face, bro. I love it. Mr. Neely says, brother has a brain tumor on his pituitary gland. Well, it's technically not the brain. It's the pituitary, which is just below the brain. But there's nothing good about it. Nothing good about it. I wonder, is it a hormone secreting tumor or is it not a hormone secreting tumor? So this is the topic in question here. Which actually relates to, you know, the discussion on kratom we were just having. Kratom is going to raise serum prolactin, activate the lactotropes in the pituitary, and potentially lead to pituitary tumors. You don't want that. If your estrogen is out of control consistently in conjunction with prolactin, that there's scientific basis for the formulation of pituitary tumors in that regard. They're not fun. I've treated people. I've consulted people. I can't say treated because I'm not a doctor, on what to do in those cases, and kind of gone through with them the treatment as well as like how to manage sexual function when that was what I was hired for, like how to manage sexual function when this is happening, because, you know, pituitary tumor I mean, if it's secreting prolactin, it's just inhibiting pulsatile LH and FSH secretion, and you're just not going to make testosterone as a result. And prolactin itself inhibits, vascular level erections. It's just like not good at all. So there's nothing good about it. I mean, the treatment is dopamine agonists. In addition to really the best treatment, I guess, in my scientific study of the matter would be dopamine agonists like cabergoline or bromocriptine in conjunction with estrogen control. Estrogen has a direct action on the lactotropes, which produce prolactin, and they literally manufactured pituitary tumor in rats by keeping their serum estradiol at 100 picograms per milliliter. Something that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people parroting that estrogen is just great and you should let it go forever. Obviously haven't read. Too much watching your favorite YouTube guru and believing everything they say. Can't do that. Don't believe everything I say. Look it all up. Validate every single thing. That's what you got to do. But yeah, you don't want anything to do with pituitary tumors, man. They are not good. Some of them can branch out into the optic chiasm, like it's the area that controls your vision, up there, like it's like in here. It's this very small little strip called the optic chiasm. Tumor pushes into that. You're going to have fucking vision problems and some permanent. Someone's asking a question about waking up early in the morning relating to nootropics, and this is a good question because I was thinking about this today. Hold on a second. There we go. So the question is, Ira is asking, hey, Ryan, which nootropics or strategies would you recommend to help you quickly wake up in the morning? Look, that's why people drink coffee, right? Definitely methylxanthine. If you can get a hold of some powdered theobromine and just dose 50 milligrams the moment you wake up, it's going to be a lot easier to get up. That's a hack for waking up, early if you're not used to it. But, what a lot of people don't realize is like when they try to start waking up at 5:30 or 6, like I'm going to change my life and start waking up early. That's when I wake up, 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'm like wide awake out of bed, but it's because I'm used to it. If you're not used to waking up early, your circadian rhythm and your brain, it's like, how does your brain know when to stop spindling? The spindle cycles and revitalization of neurotransmitters and stuff in the middle of the night. It's like you may be used to at 5 a.m. doing some of that stuff, and then you try waking up at that time and you're going to be all fucked up for a couple of days. So it takes getting used to for sure. Like when you're switching to consistently waking up at 7 or consistently waking up at like 8 or 9, and then you want to change to waking up at 5:30, there's an adjustment period. Other than that, though, I would have powdered theobromine and I would dose 50 to 70 milligrams the moment you wake up with some water. Drink some coffee too, get some food in, and yeah, I think you'll be wide awake very, very shortly after that. OCD, nootropics for OCD, can't really get into that. I think that's a dopaminergic, based condition. I haven't studied the neurophysiology of it enough, whereas I have with ADHD and ADD, and it's like dopamine transporter mediated. I'm not sure if OCD is the same. So I couldn't really answer. Good question. If you guys have any other questions, please ask them. Ask them. I got a question about the differences between R stacks. The primary difference, so we'll get that question on the screen here. Difference between cortex and torque. Primary difference is cortex is verbal fluency, stimulation, yes, mental energy, yes, but it's much more of like a brain fluidity, improvement in processing type of nootropic. When you take it, you're gonna be like, oh, my brain's working better. I'm stimulated and I want to do it. Like you're like into what you're doing. You want to be productive taking cortex. But it gives you so much brain fluidity. It's like you high dosed fish oil with modafinil or something. It's very strong. Whereas torque is just hardcore stimulation with background of an improvement of processing. The most prominent accents of torque are that brain energy centric thing. I wanted to make it like absolutely clear that when you take torque, your brain turns on. That you're not like, I don't know, is this placebo? I'm noticing I'm functioning better, but I'm not entirely sure. Torque is like, you're going to be sure that you're functioning better, but for a long period of time too. Not just 3 hours or 4 hours, but 5 or 6 hours. That's the primary difference between the two stacks. Good question. And there's a new Cortex formula that I'll be launching in a couple months. So look forward to that. I think you guys are I mean, those of you that get Cortex, you're going to like Cortex even more. And those of you that haven't tried it, you're going to be like, wow, this is just amazing. The stack in and of itself is great, but we're always trying to improve things. So we're going to make it just a little bit better. Question about uridine versus triacetyluridine. My take on that. And for those of you that don't, get what that is, you got two different, uridine-like nootropics that are neurogenic and optimize dopamine receptors and give you energy and give you motivation. That's primarily what uridine does, as well as like stimulation. And that is uridine monophosphate. That's the predominant like supplement form, predominant nootropic form. And then there's triacetyluridine. All triacetyluridine is like it's an acetylated version of uridine. So, it onsets a little quicker, it's a little more potent, but I think the biggest difference is you need less of it, to get a comparable effect. So it comes back to the argument though of modafinil versus armodafinil, which is the same thing. Like armodafinil, you take less of it, 35, 40 milligrams instead of 100 or 200, and you get somewhat of a comparable effect as like a higher dose modafinil. But it doesn't mean that it's any better. You know what I mean? Me personally, I get 200 milligram tablets of Moda and have a pill cutter and cut them in force and then proceed to cut them if I need to thereafter to dose them. And I like doing that. You know what I mean? I'm used to it. I know how it's going to affect me. It's just tried and true. So I don't even use armodafinil. I have used it, but I don't use it. I stick with tried and true. The same is true with uridine and triacetyluridine. I mean, you could try it. Look, 25 to 50 milligrams of triacetyluridine. You can go up to 75 to 100 and see how you fare. And maybe you'll like it just because it's easier and you have to take less of it. My personal take on the matter is they're both awesome, and I just use uridine. That's a good question, right? Because for different people, different nootropics are going to like be more convenient or whatever, right? You may find that a 25 or 50 milligram dose of triacetyluridine is like awesome for you. And even because of its like sort of more bioavailability or potent onset, like maybe has a potentiated effect. I always noticed that when I took triacetyluridine versus uridine, that the memory processing or that sort of internal computing power enhancement was a little bit better. Hard to say if I was making that up, you know what I mean? Or if that was like some sort of unrelated thing or placebo, but I noticed it when I used to take triacetyluridine. I don't take it anymore because, again, I just take uridine, and that's usually with Cortex. But sometimes just alone with other stimulants like T-crine or theobromine. Colostrum as a nootropic, not a nootropic, may help you focus if you have an insult of cytokines that are immune system related, but otherwise not a nootropic. And it would do that by alleviating some of that or modifying some of that inflammatory insult that is cytokine related, in which case, yeah, look, if you have any kind of gut inflammation issue and you're producing a bunch of cytokines, it's going to disrupt your neurotransmitter synthesis and you're going to feel crappy. There's so many people that like haven't gotten into that physiology and like, yeah, I don't think gut inflammation messes with your brain. Like you just don't know the mechanism for it. Now there's a very clear mechanism for it. Trey's asking a super chat question about bromontane social stack. Well, let's move that out of the way here. A bit of a loaded question because that assumes that I take bromontane for social capacity, social situations, and I don't necessarily. So I've never tried to like with the intention of being more social. I don't think, take bromontane. However, if you were to try to do this, like just try to be more sociable or something using bromontane, you probably want to stack with fasiracetam. That would be my first suggestion. Just get a little GABA B modulation, a little kind of calmness. You could bring in theanine too. Any balancer that like works well for you that's not too potent, a GABAergic or something, would work. Like there is a known template that I first discovered when I was consulting a dating guru from Italy. I know this sounds bizarre. This dude from Italy hired me a long time ago, paid me for the entire year. He's like, I'm a pickup guy, famous YouTube guy. And he's like, hey man, I need you to help me to have more confidence when I go out and do pickup and film it. I'm like, okay. And what we figured out was the template was a stimulant nootropic and then a GABAergic. That was literally the template. We were, in some of our most extreme cases, we were using phenylpiracetam and phenibut, which I don't suggest. This was just, he was open to doing it and wanted a very particular result and paid us for the year and was a famous YouTuber. So I'm like, all right, this will work. So let's just do it. But otherwise, I wouldn't suggest that. I take bromontane and a GABAergic, fasiracetam, theanine, maybe some picamillin. If you respond well to C-Lank is a GABA-A allosteric modulator, which means it's going to make GABA work better at the GABA-A receptor site. Those would be my suggestions. Thank you so much for the $5, Trey. Hope you're doing great. Hope life is good wherever you are. I think you're in like the middle of the country, aren't you, man? Ohio or something? If you're in Ohio, you're somewhat close to me. I'm in Pittsburgh. I am in P-burg. All right, guys, I'm going to end the stream. Thank you so much for your questions. Epic questions. We'll do another stream next week, same time, more than likely, 10 a.m. Eastern time. I'll have a thumbnail on YouTube to notify you guys that it's happening. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Hope you guys are, getting out today. If it's nice around you and enjoying the spring, I hope you've had a good week, and I hope you have a good next week. Monday comes around and a lot of people are always like, shit, Monday, fuck Monday. Let's go into Monday happy. Let's go. Let's become better versions of ourselves this week. Let's continue working on our bodies, continue working on our brains. That's what we're all about here. All right. Epic hanging out with you.